Welcome. My name is Barb Johnson, and I am so delighted that you're here, and thank you for your interest in the HIL presentation and the HIL project. My goal today is to help you to give lots of examples and ideas as to how to embed 4 high-impact leadership principles throughout the school year. And this is based on our work in cohort A as well as in cohort B. And we're so thankful for the HIL project to give us the opportunity to really support schools and the usefulness of these 4 high impact leadership principles. And hopefully then you too, by using this learning map, will be able to see some of the work that we have done and to gain lots of ideas as to how you too might want to use these principles, knowing that they are have been used out on the field with great success. To give you a little perspective of who I am, my name, again, I said is Barb, and I am a reading specialist. For many years I have been, and then also I worked as a principal. And so I was able to, as a reading specialist, help coach teachers and teach many children about reading and how to read. And then as a principal was able to help lead with my leadership team to help lead the building with a Blue Ribbon designation, as well as to be studied by the Reading Now Network project. So what we're going to do now is move carefully and thoughtfully, but quickly through these principles, because at the end of the day, what I'd love to have you be able to do is apply them to your school, your unique school with your unique staff and your unique leadership structure and tools. And every building and every situation is so different, and yet there's so many ways to tackle this job using these 4 leadership principles. And so what we want is we want to really get those principles in place that are going to help have the greatest impact on the classroom and be of greatest support to the teachers so that the students are supported in the best possible way. The 4 high impact leadership principles then are to have a positive core. And with that, we're going to include the growth mindset. Secondly, evidence-based decision making. And with that, we're really going to study carefully our data, our children's data. And then thirdly, with the collective ownership, we're going to emphasize there how important it is for every grade level to understand and to own the standards and to teach them with some consistency for the children. And then lastly, to help us to organize our buildings, tools and resources and PD so that all the teachers, whether they're veteran or new, are supported, and then the children are also. In having a growth mindset, one of the goals is to really highlight resources that teach about a growth mindset so that the staff and the students and the parents as well can understand how the brain benefits from practice and goal setting and reframing. When digging into data, we're going to look for lots of ways to show the children that we want to give them feedback on their data, and so that they can use it to help monitor their own growth, and that we can use it to really help the children as quickly as possible before the challenges become greater. In sharing leadership, we want to look for a common understanding about our state standards. There are 14 ELA reading targets and 14 ELA writing targets. So we could start with that and then use that language to really make sure we're all understanding them similarly and making sure that we're teaching them with some common language for the benefit of the children as they move grade to grade. Finally, we want to work on building systems. I know many teachers are very organized within their classroom, and they yearn for also that same level of organization in the building. And so what we would do is look for ways to backward map and to use our tools, our consistent strategies, our goal setting, but to have some threads of consistency and fidelity run right through the building. Again, that goal would be to have the teachers feel that their work was valued and followed up upon, and then the children would benefit too, because then they would be able to receive the interventions and the support that they needed, as well as the enrichment that they might value. These principles can be adapted to any leadership style, whether you are hands-on or hands-off, or whether you have a large leadership team or small, these will really help the school to gain traction and help the students to grow. And the goal then is to help you see ways that you can be the encouragers, the pacers, and the organizers as the leadership group, and to see the power of the focus that comes from being ever so intentional and purposeful. Why do these 4 principles make such a high impact on the classroom? Well, we know that the vision is to have the children reading complex grade level text, which is standard 10. And we know also that our profession is wonderful, including being very fast-paced and meaningful and creative and multifaceted. And the children are very unique in every classroom. The needs that they have are many and challenging in some cases, and we want to be support to every student. And so in doing that, the more that we can stay organized and stay focused and support each other, the benefit is for us as staff, but also for the children, so that they can really feel that our focus helps them to focus in the shortest amount of time. We can use these 4 high impact leadership principles also in our professional growth and PD, because we are going to learn about growing a growth mindset in staff and students. We're going to learn how to really use data well. We're going to learn how to align our curriculum with our instruction and assessment, and we're going to learn how to organize our instruction for consistency, integrity, and fidelity. We can use these 4 principles for agendas, for PLC meetings, for staff meetings, for formats, for communications, for themes and goals, bulletin board reminders, visuals. There are many ways that we can embed these 4 in all these areas so that we can, again, stay organized and focus. So now we're going to next consider the how. How are we going to accomplish this? So how are we going to grow the mindset and use our data, share the leadership and building systems? In doing that, I'd like you to have 4 visuals in your mind. The first one is a growth mindset coach book, which could be a resource that you might choose to purchase. The second one is a running record data sheet for help in collecting data as a visual. The third one is a text feature anchor chart, and every grade level could have a copy of this and use it to help remind them about the purpose for bold print and captions and diagrams. And the last one is to help you to see a classroom library and to think about ways that we could organize our classroom libraries across the school so that the children every year could benefit from having kind of a consistent way of organizing the books, whether it be by genre or by the subject matter, or if it were by level, whatever way we would choose, or author, whatever way we would choose to organize them, what the children would have is a familiarity, and they would know in the September of the year and the August of the year exactly how to approach that library. In helping develop agendas, then, think about these types of things that would be so useful for encouragement and for focus and for follow-up and for growth. Because in every one of these ways, in these small, short paragraphs that would help guide an agenda, there is development of capacity going on, as well as motivation and engagement. So for number 1, for example, we would decide on a growth mindset resource. For number 2, we'd say, okay, what data do we already collect, and where are we storing it, and how are we going to access it, and how and when will we study that data? Thirdly, we would say, all right, we want to make sure that everybody has knowledge of the ELA targets, and we should discuss how we're going to teach them so that everyone across the grade levels knows what the grades previously had taught to the children, and then they could just pick up the ball and carry it forward. And then lastly, what we would want to think about is all the different things that we already have organized well. Perhaps it's sight word collections. Maybe we do that every fall and we pass them on to the grade level. We could think about those things. Then as we move into October, we keep a focus on the 4 by developing them in this way. So number one, we found a quote that we used from our resource about how the brain works. For the second one, we thought about how data helps build community when students have goals and receive feedback. And so that's a great bonus for how we can use data. So we want to think about how are we celebrating the growth data that we receive and have it for easy reference. The third one is we could talk about the ELA Target 6, and we could see how that was based on standards 5 and 7. It asks us to teach text structures and features. How are we doing that at every grade level? And perhaps, again, we'd want to make anchor charts that really show what those text structures are and the features. And then lastly, we could organize running record materials. We could organize our Tier 2 academic vocabulary list, but we could think about what resources, tools in our building that we have that we would like to make sure that everybody benefits from, both staff and students. Moving on to November, there again, there would be a growth mindset reminder. There was a research example given in 2014 where teachers gave acknowledgement about their students' performance to the parents, and that decreased in overall failure rate. So that is an interesting and motivating concept to think about. Secondly, we would want to think in terms of the data that's coming up. So what is passage-based writing going to look like on the M step? Do children understand what that means to write about a passage? Thirdly, in terms of the standards and the alignment of those standards for our instruction, do we understand that in the writing that's required from the students, they are asked to have citations, they are asked to have transition words? Well, how are we teaching citations, and what transition words are we teaching throughout the building? Just having that conversation, that just heightens that awareness. And then lastly, building a system. So we could think about how every grade level is asked to teach the 3 types of writing, and we could help each other understand how we do that at every grade level so that we could see how it grows and we could support each other, and we would better know what level of knowledge the children are coming into our grade level with. And then lastly, in January, here's another way. We're going to, again, focus on the 4. We're going to use a growth mindset quote, which in this case was the theme for February. A goal without a plan is just a wish. And so all month long, we would celebrate that fact and help the children learn that plans are important and they make our dreams come true. And secondly, we could say for the monitoring the data, perhaps we want to take time to review Doug Reeves' podcast where he says that feedback can really promote academic growth. And he gave tips on how to give that feedback. And these 4 are listed there for the staff to enjoy as just in time, and it's just for me, and it's information that will move my learning forward. Thirdly, what we want to do is we could check in with about the grade level standards and remind each other how the grammar targets are there and the editor's checklist is there for every grade level. And again, in that conversation, we would be aware of what others are using to teach those grammar targets and the editor's checklist, and then we could benefit from having that conversation and perhaps using the same tool. Lastly, we could talk about our map data because likely that was given in January, and so we could take time to review it and organize how we want to provide our interventions based on what that map data showed us, as well as plan our celebrations. Now it is your turn, and so I want to just ask for you in this next part of this time together is if you would just break off, depending on how many minutes you have, to brainstorm together in smaller groups so that everyone has a chance to talk and to give their ideas. We're going to brainstorm around each of the 4 principles for just a few minutes. And then what I'd like to ask you to do is to report out to the larger group some of your initial thinking, your initial ideas as to what to use for the 4 principles in your building. Then finally, after that, what we're going to do is we're going to just show briefly a sample next step action plan, and then another sample progress monitoring plan that you are welcome to adapt and to use and to just have as an idea of how to keep the momentum moving forward. So then if you would just take a minute now to divide into groups of 4, and I will go through the screens and just give you some talking points that you could just bring up in your group and throw out ideas and just get this conversation started and on this journey. First one then is the growth mindset group. It's going to brainstorm resources, bulletin boards, newsletters, teaching points. The second group is going to think about what fall assessments are we giving and collecting. How will we prepare our students for those assessments? The third group will talk about whether or not everyone has knowledge of the English language arts targets for reading and writing. And the last group will talk about the resources that maybe would be better organized at our school if we did it a different way, or if we just took the time to think about how we wanted to gather them and collect them and use perhaps our phonics materials or our phonics PD. Just making sure that we have a common language with that, or classroom libraries, whatever that might be. Thank you for meeting in a small group. And now, before we report out, I would just like you to ask if there could be a note taker just to jot down some of these initial thoughts. And then what we'll do is shape them into an action plan. So the group would go first would be the growth mindset group. Second group would be around the data that you're collecting and how we're preparing our students before we give the assessment so that they show us what they know, so we know it's valid data. Thirdly, reporting out on where we store our grade level standards, those particular targets for every grade level that are given to us by the state of Michigan. Do we have them available either digitally or with hard copies? And then lastly, we would talk about the organization that we think might be benefiting to be improved. We know that teachers are very organized within their classrooms, and that our goal is just to carry that out in the school. Next steps, due to our encouragement, due to our focus and our following up, we now have an opportunity to make our own next step plan. So if we were going to leave this meeting today with a plan of action, it could look like this. For the first high impact leadership principle, the growth mindset, perhaps we're going to purchase a resource that we've chosen. Secondly, perhaps we're going to have someone make that data document available on a Google Doc and put columns. And then what we will do is we will add our data to that and plan for when that can be accomplished. Thirdly, a sample plan of action would include, for the third principle, that we would think about those target standards and make sure that every teacher has them, and that we also provide them the Tier 2 academic vocabulary words. And then fourthly, in terms of systems, perhaps we want to discuss for what the 5 tech structures are, and we would like to think about what would be the best way to have a visual of what it means to have a close reading task before us. Then as we come back for our next visit, for our next meeting, what we could do is think about, okay, we had those goals and dreams, for example, number 1, to buy the resource and then to really teach the children about the growth mindset. So what we could do is say, all right, is everyone feeling comfortable with that? Do we see evidences of that comfort? Because we have noticed bulletin boards in the rooms, and our intercom announcements incorporate the growth mindset. Secondly, we could look at our data document. We could say, does it look complete? And if not, what would be the barrier that might be preventing that from happening? Thirdly, we could ask about those Tier 2 academic vocabulary words. Have we noticed they're posted? And again, if not, what could be the barrier? Perhaps more support and encouragement is needed. And perhaps we could provide those posters. And then lastly, the building of systems, thinking about perhaps we've had decided on also making sure that children had books that they could read at home, either digitally or paper books. And we could follow up on making sure that everybody had been able to access that digitally, or that we provided the paper copies. And before we leave the slide too, I just would like to point out the connections to the literacy essentials, because those are so valuable as well. And I wanted you to appreciate that there's a definite connection, and the utilization of those literacy principles helps to really give heart and soul to each of the 4 principles, because they provide many other examples as well. Lastly, then, I hope that this time has given you ideas as to how to use these 4 principles to generate even more energy and success in your building. This progress is going to keep everyone moving, and it will show the power of that focus. Carol Dweck has a wonderful quote when she says, "A growth mindset is the belief that with practice, perseverance, and effort, people have limitless potential to learn and grow." And we know from experience that that includes both staff and students, and how wonderful it is when we can inspire children to not give up, but to know that their brain is getting stronger whenever they embrace challenges the same way that it is for us, that there's a great power in the power of yet. And maybe we don't have some of these in place yet, but we definitely could get there just with thinking about these 4 high impact leadership principles. So I want to thank you so much for your time. I hope that it was helpful for you. And please reach out if you have any questions, and have a great day.